Hey, it is Eric, it is Brian. We are back from Autobahn Country Club and doing time in Joliet, where the weather was fine, there was plenty of Chicago to go around,
Not there.
and the cars were predictably awful. Let's get to it.
On July 1st, General Motors named Brian Nesbitt.
Brian.
What?
Yeah, right here.
What?
We don't usually, start with news or have any news at all. It's not really what we do here.
Named Brian Nesbitt to be GM's Senior Vice President of Design. Nesbitt is widely credited with developing the Chrysler PT Cruiser. Nesbitt's first high-profile design after joining GM was the compact 2006 Chevrolet HHR.
What does this have to do with lemons?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a great question, Cheryl. Two teams brought Nesbitt's iconic contributions to doing time in Joliet.
On the heels of the hit Netflix documentary Trainwreck: Poop Cruise, the Shitshank Redemption rethemed their multiple trophy-winning PT Cruiser Turbo as the Carnival Triumph cruise ship, which of course drifted in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico after losing power and earned the moniker Poop Cruise.
And also, High Roof Racing returned with their own turbo version of a Brian Nesbitt classic, the HHR SS, that was an honest-to-God show car. They still have the stock passenger seat so you could admire Brian Nesbitt interior goodness in full regalia. Good luck, Brian Nesbitt, and may all future cars under General Motors' umbrella have the panache of the PT Cruiser, HHR, and the 2008 Chevy Malibu that you're also responsible for.
On the subject of Malibus, Bad Decisions Racing returned with their 2006 Chevy Malibu Max and a Chicago theme to go with it, Max Headroom. Max Headroom was originally some kind of weird British neo-futurist TV character from the 80s, but in 1987, famously, someone hijacked the signal of Chicago's PBS station while they were wearing a Max Headroom mask. Bad Decisions did this whole bit, including peddling New Coke, a spanking of a bare ass on live TV with a fly swatter, and of course referencing Chicago hero Chuck Swirsky. It's all pretty normal stuff for a Lemons paddock, really. Anyway, the Mac stopped working after a few hours. The team took a look at the oil and, not great.
On the subject of local Chicago heroes, the new Pope, Pope Leo, is from Chicago. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit team dressed as Chicago Cardinals and had smoke from their trunk-mounted chimney to announce that they had a new theme. Also, the Snap Crackle Pop 211 added prison stripes to the car and came as jailed governors of Illinois. Fun fact, governors from Illinois are the highest number of governors that have been in prison. This, of course, ties back nicely to Lemon's first race at Autobahn, which was called the Rod Blagojevich Never Say Die 500. And many years later, Lemon's racer Nick Heine bribed Eric Fittingly with a cameo from the since pardoned Rod B.
Hi, Eric Rude. This is Rod Blagojevich and Nicholas Haney. Tells me that you got a big responsibility this weekend. There's a big event in Joliet. It's fake and a fraud if the competition is a fake and a fraud.
In the vein of personalized bribes, Greg Hewer was the first guy that I met at my first Lemons race, which was the Rod Blagojevich Never Say Die 500. He and his dad Roy have raced a couple of Mercury Bobcats for years. Just awesome Lemons people. For their bribe this time around, Greg's mom made me a custom t-shirt quilt out of old Lemons team shirts. That was amazing. And on top of that, their now Mustang V6 swapped 1981 Mercury Cougar got a Twister theme to go with the hail damage done to the car, obviously many, many years ago. So hella sweet all around.
Matching the Cougar in Malaise-era goodness was the Fat Bastards Chrysler Fifth Avenue. We last saw it scraping the door handle chrome at NCM, but they spent the last 9 months fitting it with bigger wheels, better tires, new bushings, and crucially, an improved intake. They had an awesome prison theme with lunch trays, a prison lawyer, and shivs hidden in pretty much everything, and they stayed in costume all weekend. That was great.
We see a lot of classic racing liveries in Lemons like Gulf Oil and Martini and Rossi, and especially on German cars, Jägermeister, which is this horrible medicinal German booze that was on the side of like Porsches and BMWs in the 70s to 80s everywhere. Frankly, Jaeger-themed Lemons car is kind of tiring, so it was refreshing when the Rumpelmans and Rumble Strips team put a different German booze livery on their car, where they kinda never happened but should have sponsorship. If you're unfamiliar, Rumpelmans is like a noxious peppermint schnapps that turns your stomach inside out. But in the 1980s, they had a famous D&D style ad campaign featuring a scantily clad female warrior riding a polar bear. And the polar bear was not having a great time with his newfound stardom.
Cutlass Racing, we love this family team out of Minnesota. They always show up in force with costumes homemade more often than not, and after totaling their Gutless Cutlass last fall, they showed up with a new-ish one, and of course, a Cutlass Supreme Sesame Street theme. Now, as a kid, I always loved Super Grover. He was my hero, who I aspired to be, and I got to meet Super Grover. And Eric, they say never meet your heroes, but it was pretty great, right? Right, Eric?
Yeah.
Right now I am feeling a feeling, and it is not a very good feeling.
The golf-themed Volkswagen Golf, not a new concept, but the three-hole golfers kind of own this theme from now on. They spent their entire time when they weren't in the car chipping practice balls at cars in the penalty box, driving around on their paddock ride made out of a bed frame and plywood, and running the car on 700 treadwear tires on the track. Everything about the car is fine, but their priorities clearly are in the right place.
Meyer Shank Racing, rookies with a couple of team members who just graduated from dental school, they put a Saturn rocket on their roof. They understood the assignment when they brought a Saturn. Also, on the subject of stuff on the roof, how about a coffin on a Ford Probe? That's what the grave robbers gave us.
Now, if you're gonna race a Miata, we always recommend you spend some time and turn it into a thing. In this case, the Slow Bros turned their Miata into Magikarp from Pokemon.
Up at 11, Pokemons, imaginary creatures that show up in real places. They're all the craze that's sweeping the nation. What will they think of next?
Anyway, the Slow Bros made the eyeballs out of Nerf basketballs, which kept coming off at exactly the same part of the track every time they put them back on. The safety crews were able to catch them all.
Move this man!
Rumham Racing returned with their Always Sunny Austin Powers mashup, this time with Frau Farbissina as their team boss, and she really whipped them into shape.
Always worth mentioning is the Hillbilly Deluxe Cadillac CTS, which of course stands for Catera Touring Sedan. This one has the Catera V6 and an automatic. They've barely made it past noon in previous races. This time they made it all the way through Saturday. Good job, guys.
The Mulsanne Straightjackets returned with their Rusty Alpha Spider covered up with sheet metal, Bondo, and paint to look like an Alpine A210. This is crap can engineering at its most beautiful.
Also aesthetically pleasing is In Search of Excellence's Edsel Ranger. It was pulled out of a collapsed barn, draped over a Crown Vic, and it looks magnificent.
The judges for this race were Corey, myself, Eric, and new guy Dave, who you might remember for building the twin-engine Ford Tempo. We did a Chicago Pope judicial theme with miter hats to match. Now, some of the penalties we dished out, we brought back the door prize, and after judging a staff breakfast at this fantastic place called Louis' Waffle House in Joliet, we saw the restaurant had its very own selfie booth. We also, since it was Pope themed, we did a Bob Ross Sistine Chapel painting. We did a sexy car wash.
Mama Light.
We had fishing. And we also had the second edition of Texas Bob's original Spam of Damocles. Basically, the team got 3 black flags and they had to wrap Spam and put it in their engine bay. Well, in Colorado, it kept them from getting a 4th black flag. This time around, not so much. The team failed and they had to eat it while Lemon's rally master Jeff Stobbs gave a lecture on the Spam making process.
Excess fat, excess cheap parts into a giant machine.
Here are your class winners. Heel and toe failures took the Class B lead with 6 minutes to go and won by a full 6 seconds. And Box by Dumpster Fire Motorsports took the Class C lead in the last few minutes of the race too. Considering this car was a husk of a Subaru with no wiring in it less than a year ago, it's pretty impressive. Might even be Impreza if.
Fool this man!
Occupy Saturn usually have a reliable car with some questionable driving. This time they sorted the driving out, but the nuts from the downpipe of their exhaust header backed out and the hot exhaust gases nuked their fan assembly and wiring in about 4 seconds.
Homefail Motorsports had rethemed their Ford Ranger as a barn find, complete with cow. You might remember this team. They had a small fire in the transmission caused by a mouse nest that had been there over the winter. They discovered some new collateral damage that probably involved the mouse meeting its demise chewing through a main wire. Never did find the mouse, but they did get it running again.
Yesterday's Autosports, in addition to catching fire a little bit, their clutch linkage or throwout bearing was failing. They decided to run it till it wouldn't clutch anymore, which, it turns out, sounds like this.
Just keep going, just keep going.
Dunning-Kruger Effect spent all weekend rewiring one of their WRX swapped Imprezas. Now, they have an old, and I do mean old, stacker semi-hauler rig for their Lemons cars. But a team nearby needed an engine hoist to swap an engine. These guys said, hey, why not use the liftgate on our semi-trailer? That was pretty sweet.
We've seen Team Dirtbag have various Porsche maladies over the years. This year, they torched a clutch and spent only about 6 or 7 hours replacing it. We've seen teams spend an entire day fixing that, so that was impressive. Less impressive was dumping all of the engine oil everywhere, but at least we knew who the culprit was.
Heroic fix went to roadwork racing. First of all, this rookie team showed up in force with a roadwork theme, which is very befitting the upper Midwest where, as the saying goes, there are 2 seasons, winter and construction. Unfortunately, they blew up their clutch, among other problems, and this required moving the intake and then fishing out the bolts on the top of the transmission that are mostly blind and accessible only through a narrow gap between the engine and the firewall. They had an awesome time, and they got the hardest fix done. Pretty heroic.
I Got Screwed went to Ho 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 Racing. Now, this is a team of longtime Lemons people from Iowa who've raced this crappy Civic for forever. It's street registered, it goes to car shows, kind of a low-key awesome team, frankly. Also, not strangers to blowing up engines. Here's them at their first race doing their very first head gasket. Ah, such youth. Anyway, this weekend they blew a trailer tire on the way to the track, which got them off to a bad start. On Saturday, the B-Series engine they'd swapped in blew a connecting rod straight out in spectacular fashion. There were flames from the freed oil and out the exhaust, causing a red flag, unfortunately. Now, no biggie, they said. We've done this before. We have a backup engine. It's from a CRV. It might turn over. I don't know. We'll give it a whirl. As we mentioned, their paddock neighbors Dunning-Kruger lent them liftgate to use as an engine hoist. Voila, ready to go Sunday morning for about an hour. And one of the gaskets in the fuel rail failed and the car came to a halt, this time really on fire. It torched the wiring, everybody was okay, but their weekend was over and they ended with the dubious distinction of causing 2 red flags in the same weekend. I hate to say it, but they got screwed.
Now, our special award at this race went to Wildly Ambitious Performance. At their first race, we saw them still retheming their car on Sunday when we rolled in.
It's never too late to add the theme.
This pair of young engineers and their always supportive parental figure have finally beaten the system. they've made the first Lemons anti-roll bar that can leak.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Why bother with simple automotive-specific shock absorbers when you can buy a pair of roughly same-size hydraulic cylinders, then cross-feed the bottom of one shock to the top of the other, and then the valve between them? And their not infrequent visits to the penalty box suggested that there's still some improvements to be made in the system. Luckily, they can tune the amount of cross-flow by opening and closing the valves. What they couldn't quite figure out was how to keep the entire rear end of the car from bouncing wildly when it drove on the straights, or even at 8 miles an hour in the paddock. We're sure the Mark II version's going to be much better. Still, we love the approach, and we thought it deserved an appropriate German name for the special award, the Überdimensioniert Sprungwagen Award.
Judge's choice went to Bad Decisions Racing. In addition to their Malibu Max, they brought this 4th gen Chevy Camaro. You may remember that Bad Decisions acquired a Soviet-built Volga Gaz 24 out of a dusty warehouse in Chicago, and then they saved the engine for a rainy day. And wouldn't you know it, it was raining the day that they put the engine and transmission into the Camaro. ZMZ24 engine, no shit. So what the hell is a ZMZ24 engine? It is a 2.4 liter pushrod engine that is rated for 70-ish horsepower on 76 octane gas. Who the hell knows what it makes now? Probably basically nothing. Unfortunately, the engine kept tossing or breaking accessory belts and then wanted to overheat since it didn't have a water pump. Luckily, they had cached some spare parts in case anything serious went wrong. Once they did figure out the belts and the alignment of it, it ran reasonably well. We're really looking forward to seeing this thing again. It is amazing.
Organizer's choice went to Bite Marks Racing. Now, Bite Marks, they're a veteran team, and they have brought us Lemon's first Pontiac G3. Now, you probably didn't even know that this existed, or remember that it existed. The fun part is, this actually completes the Lemon's collection of Pontiac G-Series late models, along with the G8, the G6, and the G5. Anyway, the G3, not a Brian Nesbitt product, was just a Chevy Aveo with literally the same bodywork except the plastic bumper cover. Bite Marks Captain Keith Kemp found this exceedingly rare one with a manual transmission and also a rare blue color, like it's a Corvette collector's. The only things they did were put in safety equipment, decent brake pads, and painted the car to match its Korean origins as a Daewoo Kalos. This car was totally stock and kind of a joy to drive. The only failures were self-inflicted, actually. Keith towed this car to the track on his usual two-wheel dolly. When he went to torque the lug nuts, they were smoking red hot. Turns out he had towed it from Chicago with the emergency brake on. No bother, everything looked fine, so they just went racing. Unfortunately, the team kept their radio right behind the shifter, so when one driver reached back to grab it, he grabbed the, you guessed it, emergency brake. And he exploded the rear drums and boiled the fluid. And after they let it cool, they swapped on some fresh brake shoes, about $9 on in-stock parts at the store, and voila, it ran all weekend. Perfectly forgettable car.
We should give honorable mention to the fact that we had both a new G3 and a new Aveo for this race. Team Your Mom's Car had an Aveo that was literally his mom's daily driver for years. They raced it with the roof rack that had been on it. The captain brought his high school backpack they'd found in the car when cleaning it out. The backpack, unsurprisingly, was full of detention slips. Much like Bite Marks, all they did was put a cage in it, did virtually nothing else. The tires were bought off Amazon using, of course, the world-renowned Land's Golden LG 17s, and they torched through several sets of brake pads, but this is a perfectly cromulent way to go racing, people.
And now the prestigious Halloween Meets Gasoline went to Grimace Racing in their Mazda 2, who have been around with their unkillable Mazda 2 for a few years.
Nothing can kill the Grimace.
This time they brought the judges a custom purple vanilla milkshake to BS on a 95-degree day. Nothing says refreshing like heavy dairy products when it's hot.
It's so damn hot. Milk was a bad choice.
That's all pretty good, but Halloween Meets Gasoline is for the best theme. And in this case, Grimace did exactly what we love seeing the most for a good theme. They involve everyone in the paddock because it's fun, rather than just being performative for the judges. They were paddocked near track off, so every time they saw a car being towed in on the wrecker, they would put Grimace on a bicycle and have them deliver a not-so-happy meal to ease their troubles. So, what was in the Happy Meal? Fruit snacks, an old style, and 2 Marlboros. Now, my mom used to always call that a Chicago Happy Meal.
That brings us at last to the index of effluency, and that goes to bottom gear in their Austin Marina. Now, famously, the Austin Marina, or Morris Marina, it's the same car, is the one that Top Gear dumped all over at every single chance, eventually smashing several of them with a piano as a recurring bit. The Marina comes from the depth of the worst part of British Leyland, when basically these cars were built by trolls in sheds somewhere in England. This one in particular has been around Lemons before and is terrible. Now, Lemons rally master Jeff Stobbs and his racing partner Kevin Schraga have been looking to do Lemons for years. They were building an MGB when the Marina came up for sale not far away. They dragged it home, threw the MG engine into it, and dragged Kevin's extended family 13 drivers to make their Lemons debut in one of the worst cars built in the 20th century. Even with driver changes every 20 minutes, they beat 15 teams and the car just kept running with, the expected and occasional Lucas Electrics failure. And there was one little bit of fate that really tied it all together. This being Autobahn Country Club, there are always nice cars driving around from country club members, but on this particular weekend, of all weekends, Pagani decided to bring its brand new $3.5 million car to show potential buyers. This is the kind of thing you'd expect Jeremy Clarkson to lose his mind over, and what could be more fitting than sharing the spotlight with another Top Gear star? Here's Lemons in a nutshell.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?